Okay, guys, hi there. So, recently we've had a lot of talk and a lot of discussion over the new farm laws, so to say, and the all over protest regarding it. Now, the issue is that there isn't any MSP, and the APMC market and that whole system which was incumbent has been repealed. Well, that's a part of the wider propaganda. The truth being, these three laws are basically additional laws, which means that they would not be repealing in any manner whatsoever the existent or the incumbent system of procuring farmer produce through APMCs by private traders through commission agents. This would only add to the opportunities which are available to farmers to sell their produce to different traders, say for example at a different location in our country, through the online platform which is intended to be created by the government. So the present system is that there are notified market areas, which are the agricultural produce market areas or the APMCs, and agricultural produce market committees, and these areas are known as APMC market areas. So the farmers go there, and there are certain commission agents or certain officials which give licenses to private traders to be able to trade in these notified areas and procure farmer produce from them. That's perfectly all right. The problem, though, is that this is a very ideal situation. The reality, as per the Standing Parliamentary Committee Report 2018, was that certain private traders which have got the license to procure produce from farmers, they now form associations and do not let new private traders come into the whole picture. So the initial objective of APMC markets to give farmers a secured environment wherein they can trade and they can give their produce to a trader at the maximum price, that objective is lost because new private traders are not able to come into the wider picture. Second problem is these commission agents, because they're involved in the wider process of allowing these private organizations and private traders to form associations and whatnot, they get their commissions on part of these traders. So that's the problem of corruption in this whole system, because what happens is the farmer would come to you and he'd say that, okay, here's my produce. Now these people would intentionally leave the farmer with all his crops in the area for 3 4 say 5 days, 6 days, and then he would say that, okay, the quality of your crop has deteriorated, so we won't be buying it at MSP because under the quality criteria your crop doesn't stand out. Now, the farmer sells the produce to the APMC markets at a lower price, and then through their communications, they sell the private traders procure the products at prices which are above what the farmers got. So these commission agents are extracting their profits, and the farmers are not getting their eventual profit. Now, then comes the question of MSP. Everyone is saying that, okay, these new laws say that outside APMC markets. Now, for many of you, you think that these new laws will completely remove or destruct the original system of APMCs and MSP, the minimum support price. But that's not the case, my friend. That's entirely not the case. These new laws are just intended to give farmers an added opportunity to directly trade with a private trader whom they find appropriate. Say, for example, there's a trader who says that, okay, I'll acquire your 10 kg of rice for, say, 100 rupees, right? Now, if the MSP for 10 kgs of rice set by the government is 75 rupees, wouldn't the farmer be happy to sell the produce to a private trader outside the APMC market without the regulations and taxes which were brought by the APMC markets? And this process would give him more profit. He would directly get the 100 rupees. The trade is done. That's finished. Now, if there is a situation where the private trader tells the farmer that, okay, I'll only pay you 65 rupees for 10 kgs of rice, whilst the MSP set by the government in the APMC markets is 75 rupees, then the farmer can easily reject the offer, go back to APMC market and sell his produce at the minimum support price. That's the bloody kick. I don't know what's the problem with this whole system, because it does not eliminate the factor of MSP. It just gives the farmers an additional choice of selling their produce to a private trader who, for instance, gives a higher price for their produce. And if that's not the case, he can turn back to the APMC markets and sell his produce at MSP. That's the thing. That's the simple case. So anyone and everyone who says that, okay, you've removed MSP, there's no MSP, I don't buy this. And I guess any informed person or any literate person or anyone who's read the laws. Now, whilst I speak, I do have the laws in front of me. It's not that I'm talking all on my own understanding of the subject. I do have the whole laws in front of me, and I've read them. And I've analyzed them, and I've looked at all the critiques of this law. Yes, if you were to say that the implementation of an online platform would have been difficult, if because the government says that we'll create an online platform and the farmers would be using that in order to sell their produce to a person, say there's a farmer in Punjab and he wants to sell his rice to someone in Kerala. Now that's a different thing, because the online system has to be so you could say accurate that he gets the opportunity to do so. Yes, so the implementation part, that can be critiqued, and that can be subject to discussion. But the whole point of the protest is entirely wrong. People say that MSP will be removed. That's the fake propaganda which is being spread. That's not the case at all. Why don't people, and the biggest problem is, even if you tell people that this is the case, this is the law, even if you show them the bloody law that, okay, this is what is written there, they won't agree. They would say that they've just fixated their minds on a certain ideology, a fake propaganda which has been spread because, yes, because people need something to poke on. People need an issue to cling to gain political, you could say, political stance. People need something. And some leaders, say Arvind Kejriwal, now I'm deviating, I'm getting into politics, but this has to be brought up. Him tearing the pages of the law in his discussion in the assembly, was that right? Whence he has been the one who has already implemented the laws in Delhi. Does that even make sense? Apart from the fact that this drama was an only plot to gain political influence. So the simple thing is, the new laws, they add an opportunity, an extra opportunity beyond the APMC markets to help farmers to get better prices for the produce. If, for example, they do not get a better price for their produce from private traders directly, and in turn they give them less price, then he can turn back to the APMC markets, sell his produce there at the government decided MSP. And again, another point of contention which is being raised is, why doesn't the government fix MSP for trade outside the APMC markets? Have we totally lost it? Because from my understanding, MSP is a reference point. It's not a fixed threshold, my friend. If you fix MSP, say for example, there's a farmer who has genuinely tried to grow crops. He's a marginal farmer, he's a small farmer. He wants to sell his crops in APMC markets, but his crops are not of the required quality for procurement. In the present system, because MSP is an administrative clause, it's not a law. The officials can tell him, well, okay, your crop does not match the quality criteria for procurement, and thus we would be procuring your crop, say, at 70 rupees when the MSP is 100 rupees. But if you make MSP a law, it means that any procurement below the set MSP would be illegal. In that scenario, a farmer would not be able to sell his produce to even the APMC officials, because the officials cannot pay him less than MSP, and his crop is not of the required quality to be procured by the government. He would be in a precarious situation. And it's no surprise that in our country, in our country, the storage facilities for small and marginal farmers for their crops are not world class. Not everyone can afford to keep their crops or rice or wheat in closed environments and protect them from pests or from rain or from sandstorms or from whatnot. So you have to be practical, right? So 3 points. First off, this law or these 3 farm laws do not repeal the present system of APMCs. Second, the farmers would be getting an additional opportunity in addition to the existing APMC markets. And third, MSP cannot be legalized. It cannot be made into a law, because that would mean that any procurement below MSP would not be possible at all, which means that any farmer whose crop quality is below the required standard would not be able to negotiate even a lower price than MSP. And in that scenario, he won't be able to get, say, even 80 rupees when MSP is 100 rupees, because buying crops below MSP would be illegal. So give it a thought, give it some sense, friends, and then you'd realize the whole plot, the whole propaganda behind these farm laws. You look at China. They started by bringing amendments and reforms in their agricultural sector, and that was their start. People point to Bihar. People say that Bihar removed in 2006 their APMC systems, and they had to bear the whole problem. But no one talks about the fact that Bihar completely removed APMC system and brought private trading there. These three farm laws do not repeal APMC system. They add to it. They add an extra opportunity to it. So the whole argument that private trading will eat up farmers, they will leave them with bits and pieces, that's not true at all, bro. Because these laws, they do not repeal the existing system. They just add on to it. Get that in your mind and get that straight, because that's the benefit for our country. People need it. Farmers really need it. And for that matter, if the protests were so legitimate, why do not people or farmer groups from Maharashtra join the protests? Everyone knows that in suicide rates, Maharashtra is no less in terms of farmers. Why do not we then have agricultural or farmer groups from Maharashtra coming in and joining these protests? Why does only Punjab and for to a certain extent Haryana hold the major contribution to these protests? I'll tell you why. Because the Food Corporation of India, it acquires 65% of paddy from Punjab, which means it has to go through the APMC markets. Now, if it's acquiring 65% of paddy for the whole of India from Punjab, it means that the commission agents come into play. They can tell farmers that, okay, because of quality, we cannot buy your product at this price. We will procure our crops at this price, and then they sell it to higher authorities at a higher price, and the margin in between is for them. So you have to understand the whole issue, get to the depth of it. It's not like the government has arbitrarily brought these laws. There's been a whole lot of research. A whole committee was set up on the basis of the report of the Standing Committee of Parliamentary Standing Committee of 2018. It suggested that the APMC system has, in a sense, rotten. It's not living up to its objectives, and thus we need a new system to add to it, if not completely replace it. And then a committee was formed, which was headed by the CM of Maharashtra. It was a very high-powered committee, as they call it. It was the CMs of, if I'm not wrong, 7 different states. And if I agree to that, that you should legalize MSP and the farmers would be selling their crops at MSP. Now tell me one thing. India grows 250 million tons of crops each year, right? 250 million tons. The requirement of the country is 35 million tons. At max 35 million tons, though we are quite good with 30 million tons. The rest is for stock and for export. If you legalize MSP, the government would have to procure 250 million tons of crops from the farmers. It would be obligated to do so. In such a scenario, the cost for procurement of these crops, it's unbelievable. It would be somewhere close to 15 lakh crores, while the total budget of the union government for the whole year is 30 lakh crores. Now, is it even practical to think that a country whose GDP is 30 lakh crores for the whole year would be ready to spend 15 lakh crores on just procuring crops at MSP? Does that even make sense? You're using 50% of your country's budget to procure crops at MSP. How does that even make sense? Not at all. So please, friends, give it a good thought. Read about it. I'm not the one who would tell you that, okay, this is true or that's true. You read yourself. You analyze the things yourself. You get to know it yourself. And then you'd understand the whole issue. You'd get to the depth of it. You'd analyze every certain element according to your own understanding. But don't just follow fake propaganda and, anything and everything which is being said or told to you by someone else. I mean, there are people and groups who are, who are protesting, they are saying certain things, and when asked as to what's the real reason behind the protest, they do not have any answer. They just say that this was what was fed to us. We were told to say this loud and aloud, and we just came here and we said this. So please, my only request to you is learn, read, inform yourself, become an informed citizen, and then take your decisions. Good day. Jai Hind.